Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It's Thursday, March 12th, 2020. I'm Michael Brooks. This is Michael Thursday. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We're broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Corona swimming Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, I'm speaking with Kate Aronoff. She's the author of 2 important new pieces. Joe Biden's sketchy climate record, why Joe Biden's record and policy is anything but up to the task of dealing with the global ecological crisis, and a political realignment from hell, how Corona interacts with our current moment. Trump announces a European travel ban to stem the Corona pandemic that this administration has not been doing a bang-up job in either dealing with or covering up their total incompetence in dealing with. Europe was blindsided. The UK is exempted. The House Democrats come forward with a piddling Corona paid sick leave bill, which the Republican Senate promptly rejects because it's socialism to have a week paid sick leave. We really are governed by a death cult, and I don't.
Psychos.
I mean,
legit psychos.
This is a death. Honestly, read. I was rereading Freud's Death Instinct essay. I'm not doing like dirtbag hyperbole humor. Like literally a death cult.
Let's compromise with him.
Bolsonaro says the coronavirus is not all the media makes it out to be, as his press secretary, who was at Mar-a-Lago, tests positive for the coronavirus. India cancels almost all visas. Myanmar closes its border. And Congress approves a bill to kill Betsy DeVos's plan to further punish students. And Idlib, still in the heat of conflict between Russia and Turkey as the ongoing negotiations continue. Bernie Sanders is still in the race, of course, and he's articulating why Medicare for all is vital for our basic national security. Probably time to wake the F up, people. And guess what? The next leaks that came out to The Intercept prove that what the Brazil Wire has been reporting and saying since 2014, and what I've been saying for a couple years, the United States Department of Justice was deeply involved in the Lava Jato investigation that resulted in the political imprisonment of Lula da Silva, as well as massive body blows to major Brazilian parts of the Brazilian economy. I wonder why that is. Maybe it has something to do with access to oil. All that and much, much more on today's Majority Report. Folks, we're happy to be here. We are not going to go too late today. Because I think, look, I think it's really important that everybody, obviously, you should follow every single protocol they're telling you to follow. Disinfecting, hand washing, all of that. It's incredibly important. I don't think panic is a useful emotion, and I don't think it's positive for our politics. So even as we are giving into anxiety in this office, I think it's important to, keep a level head and, just hold that duality. We're not going into, head in the sand Trumpism, and we're also should not be having an ultra panic either. And also that, frankly, these are problems that have been emerging for decades. You go back to the Reagan era and you start gutting the social safety net, you start gutting the public health infrastructure. This is what it leads to, guys. It's not terribly complicated. If President Obama was in office, I have no doubt, and it would be utterly foolish to deny, that the response would be more effective and more responsible, obviously.
Lives would be saved.
Lives would be saved, and lives matter. So, absolutely. And this would still be a serious crisis because we do not have the public health infrastructure in the United States that even with incredible nurses and doctors and scientists and people doing and emergency responders and tech and a lot of people in health infrastructure who are talented, committed people doing serious work, some good people in various bureaucracies and so on. And even if you had an administration that was not fully committed to this market fantasy life, they're committed enough, and the bipartisan project has been enough, that we would be in a serious problem right now. And this is not about point scoring or debating or, I mean, look, it does elevate one candidate above the others because one candidate is infinitely better than the others. And of course, we can't be delusional or silly about that, but it is a fact. This is a fact. There's a book that folks can read that came out in 2000. Some of the examples are obviously dated, but it was laid out. Collapse, the betrayal of global public health. It's right there. And it's a global problem. And we see the places that, and places like South Korea and so on, have had an effective response. It's because they have a serious public health commitment. Now, this clip, and these clips are going to be, there's a gallows humor in it. But this is Kevin McCarthy. Yeah. This is Kevin McCarthy, House Republican leader. And there is a dearth of testing kits. There's a lot of misinformation about this too. And a lot of people, no doubt, are not getting tested because they're terrified of the medical bill. And there was also something I think Sam tweeted out yesterday showing that in Seattle, if you have insurance, I'm ballparking and I should have pulled it. But basically, if you have insurance, it's a couple $100 or maybe $500. If you don't, it's over $1,000. $1,500. Because this is, again, it is utterly immoral.
It's a society run by criminal rackets.
It's a society run by criminal rackets, and anybody who has bad-mouthed or propagandized against Medicare for All is complicit in this.
Yes.
And this is an example, though, of when you're actually in a crisis. And it would be immature. Of course, capitalism can do plenty of things. Capitalism can generate gadgets. Capitalism can create markets. Capitalism can do a lot. It cannot respond. And we know historically, it simply cannot. It is not capable. It does not have an incentive structure to respond to a crisis like this. So what you're about to see from Kevin McCarthy is cult thinking, wedded to obviously system-wide massive corruption at an elemental level that is getting people killed.
You're hearing from your members frustration that there are no testing kits. I mean, Congress doesn't have any testing kits. What's going on in this?
There are testing kits out there. There are people who have been tested. Congress doesn't get any forward in the front of the line, as we talked to the doctor today. I was just talking to one American company out there that is just on the verge of being able to have the test ready in the next short time. They're making sure that it's done correctly, that you could have a test back in 8 minutes. So, I mean, this is the ingenuity of this country. It's not just government's going to be able to solve it. We have such bright minds in the private sector as well. We want to harness that. We want to create the synergy. And that's what's going to get us to the point where we're going to have a vaccine for this.
This is a cult. This is a cult. And to be very clear, I'll tell you with regards to the idea of voting for Joe Biden in a swing state, I think this should be a clarifying reminder that harm reduction is real. And who has the reins in a crisis is real. And to ignore that and not factor that in your decision is ridiculous. And conversely, on the other hand, anybody that is saying that they will not support Medicare for all is complicit in this. And Joe Biden's career is complicit in this. Now, I hope people can see the duality of that comment, because both of those things are true. And both of those things are inescapable. That's how horrible a situation we're in. It would be insane and immature to not see the distinction. And it would also be insane and immature to be like, oh, well, they have a different way of getting there. Or I don't know if we can do all that. We need to do these things. If you want to continue the human prospect, we need to do these things. Yes, it's the right thing to do ethically. Yes, it's a better policy. All of these things. But if we don't start getting stuff like single-payer healthcare or some actual legitimate international and national coordination mechanisms on stuff like this, we are in for this becoming the normal. And that's all I got to say. I mean...
And not just Medicare for all in one country, right? Because we are all in this together now. We are globally linked, and we are only as safe and as healthy, not just as the lowest person in our own society, but in the whole world. So I think looking to the future, it's a very illustrative example of why people in this country should care about what happens to people around the world.
What I find so dystopian is the language that's used. Like, we have a vendor that's going to have a new test available, right? Or a supplier. I just imagine like, oh yeah, we have a vendor that's going to get water to you. We can't tell you which vendor this is. Just the arm's length, like who's actually accountable here, right? Like this is presented as if it's like, look at this dynamism we have, but really it's like, we're not actually responsible for this. We have these companies that we're going to say like they're going to get your back, but if they don't, it's not on our fault. It's the vendors that let us down, the vendors that we won't even specify the name of. Nobody is actually responsible for any of this. And I mean, that's by design.
And it's a bureaucratized, hyper-modern version, though, of a similar logic to, I remember, okay, why can't this Pakistani village get clean water, right? The money was allocated, the technology's there. Oh, because a local politician and business network is controlling the supplies and using it to reward or punish people. And that happens in every country in the world. And now we're seeing, again, it's not exactly the same thing, but it's analog. It's a more bureaucratized version. Some people can die, some people, and very specifically, look at it. I mean, the rich can be okay, the poor can die. That is a punishment reward system with a public health crisis.
And for propaganda purposes, if they die in a socialized medicine country, we'll count that against the country. But you suckers that died in America because the vendor didn't come through with the test fast enough.
Yeah, no kidding. And again,
self-sufficiency.
And I'm seeing plenty of empty store shelves. I thought that only happened in Venezuela.
I don't see how it doesn't count against capitalism when it happens in a very capitalist country.
I'm not
he's
saying
not
that.
saying that.
No, I know.
Yeah. I like that, though. It's just like, doesn't count. Doesn't count.
That's the game that's played.
It's so fatuous.
And wash your hands. The Majority Report is made possible in part by Skillshare, as you will be, hopefully, if you're lucky enough, you will be working from home and freelancing and got plenty of podcasts you should Patreon on up, and you should also join Skillshare. Majority Report is made possible in part by Skillshare, and the first 500 people who go to skl.sh/majority-report6 are going to get a free premium membership of Skillshare for 2 entire months. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers thousands of classes on almost any topic you can imagine, and all classes are taught by experts in their field. They have classes on drawing, painting, photography, video editing, web design, running a small business, and a whole lot more. Almost all the classes are less than an hour long, and every class is split up into bite-sized lessons, so it's easy to fit Skillshare into your week, even if you have a busy schedule. Everyone can benefit from setting aside a little bit more time to get creative. Skillshare has classes for every skill level, whether you're wanting to get better at something you already have a lot of experience with, or you want to explore something that's totally new to you. Membership to Skillshare is less than $10 a month, gives you access to their entire library of classes. But the first 500 people who go to skl.sh/majority-report6 are going to get free membership for 2 whole months. And we've put a link underneath the video if you're watching on YouTube. We're going to take a brief break. We'll be right back with Kate Aronoff. to the Majority Report. Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Kate Aronoff. She is a staff writer at the New Republic. Kate, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Kate, you have a piece called Joe Biden's Sketchy Climate Record. Can you get us into that? Both, I guess, before we get to what he's currently proposing and the problems with that, he will talk as he does about everything else, about his record. And, those of us on the left say, sure, let's talk about your atrocious record on any number of policy areas. But climate, he doesn't necessarily emphasize quite as much as his international experience as an example, but he tries to claim a kind of mantle of leadership for that as well. And I guess first is that true? I mean, has that even been a significant focus of his career? And secondly, what was he doing? What does that record actually look like?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I think one that surprisingly hasn't been that well explored, given how much we've heard about climate change in the last year, in part thanks to the credit of folks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders, raising the issue of the Green New Deal. A lot about, in terms of his own climate record, is his alleged role in having negotiated the Paris Agreement, right? And so you hear him talk about this on the debate stage. You heard him talk about it on Super Tuesday after his big night there. He, brings it up whenever anyone asks him about this. And as is, pretty characteristic for Biden, those statements are somewhat incoherent. It's not quite clear what he's saying at any given point. And there's also, some arguably just lies baked into that. And so I looked into this a bit for the piece, and kind of the most charitable version of what Biden is arguing is that when he met when he was meeting with Xi Jinping during his time as vice president, when they were both sort of, second in command to the premier, he claims to have had this meeting, and this is backed up by an advisor at the time spoke to E&E News, the kind of climate news and environment newsletter, a site for climate and environmental news.
Kate?
He claims that he sort of raised the idea of the two countries cooperating on emissions reduction, and that this would build momentum for the Paris Agreement. And so he brought this, the kind of openness, supposed openness of this back to Obama, and then, the story goes from there, that he, the Paris Agreement, which, people know, that's sort of established fact. Biden has sort of spun this into saying, I negotiated the Paris Agreement, and in the time since and on the campaign trail has said, I convinced, at one point he said Deng Xiaoping, whose last public appearance was in 1994, to join under the Paris Agreement, even though he was, long done for the count. He was dead by the time that was negotiated and had been for nearly 20 years. Has just sort of, spun the story that is just not true. And basically anyone who knows that was true. And in fact, what he was doing around the time the Paris Agreement was being negotiated was in fact spending a lot of time talking about how countries in Eastern Europe should embrace natural gas. And, surrounded himself throughout his time in the administration with folks who, many of whom are now actually working for natural gas companies, who, that did very well during the Obama administration. I think, what we see in talking about Biden's record on climate is not necessarily unique, which is this sort of inability to criticize things that happened in the Obama administration among a lot of Democrats. There's this idea that was good, that, everything that happened under the Obama administration is a sort of unalloyed, some positive for the world. And the story is a lot more complicated than that. And I think, Joe Biden's role in this, in particular, his role, really being a champion for the fossil fuel industry all around the world. And as, John Kerry was, as Hillary Clinton was as well, that has really not been questioned as much.
Yeah, so Joe Biden's record, and we'll talk specifically about the lobbyists in a second, but it seems like, I guess roughly speaking, there's sort of three different positions on climate. There's Donald Trump, it's not just him, there's the Republican position, which is let's just, some combination of sort of, denial of certain realities and then basically just a pure industry giveaway agenda. Then there's, Obama, Biden, but even somebody like Jerry Brown, who I think clearly takes the issue much more seriously and has actually, he's certainly on certain areas of this in California. He did some things, but there's sort of like the combination. And again, there's really different degrees. I think, Jerry Brown obviously did more as governor than Obama did as president. But the basic premise, and this is what Joe Biden is saying, this is what everybody who was running besides Bernie is saying to some degree or another, is, okay, this is a serious problem. There's a lot of like signposting, almost like branding that you believe in quote unquote science, which in a way actually makes the policy position more crazy, because if you're Trump or you're Republican, I don't believe in that, so let's just go for it. It's sort of, I believe that this is an existential crisis, so here's my answer. We need to incentivize hybrid cars. We need to improve efficiency, maybe protect the national park here and there. And then, one, we're just not going to do anything about fossil fuels generally. And then, and particularly this was big under Obama, let's hype natural gas as a so-called bridge energy. And then, of course, the third position is Bernie Sanders. It's like, actually, this is an existential threat, so let's actually meet it in a systemic way. First of all, is that a fair way to kind of lay out the three dominant positions with regards to climate and ecology? And to what role does this sort of, as a second part of it, do those industry lobbyists still play with Biden? And what does his plan now look like? Is it still kind of firmly in that second category?
Yeah, I think the way you laid it out is really accurate. I think for Biden during his time in the White House and a lot of the people that surrounded him, and I think the Obama administration more generally, there's this interesting thing, right? Which is that, like you said, they by all accounts, took the threat of climate change seriously, talked a lot about it, actually put a lot of effort into building up renewable energy, into supporting, the kind of low carbon fuels I think are pretty uncontroversial across the board. But that was sort of couched within this all of the above approach to energy, as, Obama said in multiple speeches, and became a sort of hallmark of his climate legacy, which is that if we can increase the amount of good stuff that's on offer, that will outcompete the bad, right? And so as long as we're moving away from coal, specifically the most carbon-intensive fuel, anything we can do to get off of that is good, and that includes natural gas, right? And that includes, renewables as well. And so I think you saw this real tension between, a support for certain parts of the fossil fuel industry and for renewables and for clean energy. But those things were not seen as being in contradiction in the way that we now know they are, right? We cannot continue to build up massive amounts of natural gas infrastructure and have any hope for meeting the goals laid out in the Paris Agreement. I think, the most telling episode from the Obama era is that, a few days after getting back from, this huge diplomatic success in Paris, Obama signs off on this spending bill, this omnibus spending bill that lifts restrictions on crude oil exports, right? And this, of course, sends enormous amounts of fossil fuels all over the world, sort of is a massive boost to an industry that was undergoing a downturn at the time. And just, not seeing those things as in contradiction, I think just really sums up so much of how the Obama administration approached policy. And I think, how Biden himself approached policy. And, you asked, is this kind of still where he's at? How much of the people surrounding him do we know? Is that still their approach? And things that are important there. One is that we just don't really know, right? I mean, Biden doesn't, to the extent that he is hidden, by his advisors, probably smartly so, from reporters, from much scrutiny, he hasn't really said very much, right? We have his plan, which, to his credit, is certainly more ambitious than Hillary Clinton's plan was in 2016. Represents a real kind of progression, I think, from the Obama era in certain respects. But it's also not clear that he's read it, right? It's very possible, an advisor copy and paste something from some advisor or some PDF that they found and put on the website, and we actually just don't know whether Joe Biden has ever taken a glance at that, because he's never talked about it. And whenever he is challenged about aspects of his record, about his advisors who do have connections to the fossil fuel industry, which I'll talk a bit more about in a second, he has told members of the Summers Movement, go vote for Trump, go vote for someone else. So he doesn't seem that willing to really talk about this. And I think, as I raised in the piece, a big concern is that the people he seems to be surrounding himself with, it's a little bit of a black box. We don't totally know. But what we do know is that people who he named as climate advisors have gotten enormous amounts of money from the fossil fuel industry. I mean, there's Heather Zeichel, who worked in the Obama administration on energy and environment issues. After leaving the administration, she went on to serve on the board of Cheniere Energy, which is the first company to send natural gas exports abroad, LNG. And she took $1 million, right? And she's since left the board. She says she's divested her funds, but spent no shortage of time in the private sector, in the fossil fuel industry, and in fact spent, a decent amount of her time in the Obama administration doing things like clearing the way for Shell to do offshore drilling in the Arctic, right? So she's in there. People like Frank Verostro, who is at a think tank which has accepted hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from virtually every oil and gas company on Earth. These are the people who are writing Joe Biden's climate plans.
He would love that mistake.
He would love it. I mean, that's the basis of his whole campaign, right?
Right.
And I think, we saw this report earlier this week from Axios kind of floating people who he would like to bring back in, which is just a who's who, right, of former Obama advisors. And I think the real worry there is if Joe Biden's approach is to get the old gang back together and to bring back people who he worked with before, sort of, quote unquote, return to normal plan. That will involve bringing back people who he trusts, who taught him, as he says, everything he knows about energy, who have now spent 4 years, or if not more, in the private sector and collecting checks from the fossil fuel industry. So I don't think we have a reason to believe that won't be the case. I would certainly like to see it.
So Kate,
become the nominee. But,
Kate,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Your phone's kind of cutting in and out, so I'm missing a little bit of it. But I think it'll be okay. But so can you explain? And I don't want to get into. I keep trying to stipulate. I don't want to get into kind of the primary is still happening. I'm not interested in sort of, people's questions about whether or not they should protest vote or whatever. But I do think it's very important, just as it's important to acknowledge the reality that I'm sure there would be, some, harm reduction if Biden was president over Trump, sure. But on the other hand, and again, even here, of course, it's a difference in terms of just totally accelerating. I mean, Trump is talking about using Corona as an opportunity to bail out the shale industry, okay? Although I'm frankly not convinced that a Biden administration wouldn't do that specific action either, to be honest. But regardless, of course, we know that there will be some, there's parks that will be protected. There's some investment that will happen. I mean, these are important things. They matter. But even if we just took a broader premise that the Paris Accords themselves, from a quote unquote scientific perspective, I don't want to totally naturalize this, but from what we can just kind of see, both in terms of future projections and what is just happening now, Australia, right? Like that, when does the conversation become, sure, it's great, let's do less of a bad thing, but it's okay, I'll stop rambling. You need to stop smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day now. How about 2.5? Okay, but you really actually need to stop, right? At what point does this kind of, particularly around climate and ecology, does just the limits of this all of the above approach, like running collision course with timelines that humans can't control?
Yeah, we have pretty good numbers on this, actually. The UN Environment Program and a number of other groups, just before COP25 last year in Madrid, out this production gap report, which finds that oil and gas alone, leaving out coal, which of course, we should get rid of, we should stop using most of as soon as humanly possible. But currently, oil and gas companies are on track to produce, I believe the numbers are 43 and 47% respectively, more fossil fuels by 2040 than is consistent with the goals laid out in the Paris Agreement. And I think the fact that, this has been, if there's any through point between the Democratic candidates so far, it's been a commitment to getting back on the Paris Agreement. And if you actually take those goals seriously, this quote unquote, well below 2 degrees Celsius of warming to kind of cap warming at that threshold, that means effectively, a Green New Deal, right? That means massive industrial transformation of the economy, huge public investments in remaking our grid, putting everything, electrifying everything, as the kind of saying goes, big investments in transforming consumption and affordable, no carbon public housing. I think scientists don't tend to mince words about how much we need to do. And the idea that we can do, the sort of Obama approach of supporting private industry to make these investments, to build out more renewables, to encourage tax credits for solar. That's all well and good. There needs to be a lot more of that. And on the other side of the ledger, we need to stop digging up fossil fuels, right? If you're in a hole, you stop digging. And we are very, very much right now. If there was a case to be made for all of the above, I was not reporting at the start of the Obama administration, so I'm not the expert on the kind of political climate that was happening then. But if there was a case to be made for natural gas as a bridge fuel in 2009, 2014, whatever it was, that case does not exist anymore, and any candidate who claims to be taking the climate crisis seriously needs to acknowledge that reality.
So in the last couple of minutes, you have another piece called A Political Realignment from Hell, where you talk about, this global pandemic that's hitting us and also situated in the same dynamic. And I want to connect the two things. I think you absolutely rightly say that, what Bernie Sanders and those who support him are attempting to do is revive an incredibly important tradition in America, which is, even if those of us are on the left of it or whatever, but the progressive democratic tradition, Walter Reuther, people like this, or FDR, and you track the declines and turning to the hard right in the Democratic Party under Jimmy Carter, and then obviously accelerating under Clinton and maintained under Obama. And what I'm getting from your piece that I really agree with and I think is really disturbing is really starting to situate things like climate or a pandemic not as these kind of like world is going to end, everybody's wiped out scenarios that almost kind of, I mean, it certainly could still happen. If something we never talk about is, we still have tens of thousands of warheads on alert that could basically wipe out most human existence, just to kind of add to the mood here. But that what these things will do if they are not managed in a democratic and open and humane and frankly post-capitalist way, is that they will actually really reinforce and harden very harsh authoritarian tendencies. And that is the kind of, as Adolf Reed has been pointing out, like that the sort of neoliberal project is kind of almost at a point where it needs to kind of harden up. There isn't as kind of much room to sort of maintain a certain kind of market relationship in a way that is frankly less repressive. And we're seeing that most extremely obviously in Trump, but all the, in the United States, but of course all these other kinds of leaders. So first of all, how is that read on it, and what does Corona present for us right now as at this moment? Is it like a final message from God to tell people to vote for Bernie Sanders? Like what is the thing we're supposed to do here?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting watching. I mean, horrifying and very interesting watching the coronavirus as someone who spends most of my time reporting on the climate crisis, because there are these sort of bizarro parallels. And I think the biggest is that this is not a crisis neoliberalism really has tools to handle, right? This scale of public health crisis, of pandemic, as the WHO has said, there's not a profit to be made on that, right? We need a really robust public health infrastructure. We need international coordination that is not among multinational companies to, figure out what containment looks like, figure out how to, in the curve, as we've been hearing. They're really equipped to do. And I think, as someone who identifies as a socialist, I do think there are things markets, can do reasonably well. Handling a pandemic is not one of them. And I don't think taking on the climate crisis is one of them, just as, to reference that sort of democratic tradition, just as the people who were planning the war mobilization for World War II recognized that markets were not a terribly effective way to fight a war, right? We saw, effectively a quarter of American manufacturing was nationalized by the end of the war, not, necessarily out of desire for nationalized industry or socialism, but because that is just what needed to happen in order to meet demand needs to fight the Nazis.
We didn't have FDR didn't come out and say we're waiting back to hear from our vendors.
Right. There was no, mild tax incentive that helped us, defeat Hitler. Right. That is not how things went down. And I think, there's not, as you said, there's not so many legs left, I think, in the kind of neoliberal project that did seem to be, have a kind of zeitgeist in the 1990s. I think nobody's really making the case for, as the New Democrats called it, like New Deal means through neoliberal means. New Deal ends through neoliberal means, that is. And I think, what I get at in the piece and what I think is more likely to be the sort of polls going forward is something that actually I think is much darker and much scarier, which is,
Kate, I'm
politics
sorry.
around climate. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. We just totally missed you. Say much darker, much scarier. Take it from there and tell us.
Oh, sure. Just a much darker state of affairs where you have a Republican Party which isn't really denying the existence of these crises, whether that's the coronavirus or, I think in short order, the climate crisis. But they have a set of responses to that, which we know well, and that is hardening borders, that is, protecting the people that it deems worthy of protecting, which in the United States is mostly white people, native-born white people, right? Or white people born in the United States or citizens, et cetera, and kind of apportioning needs based on that. And so I think the way that, as we're chained as being a kind of fight between the deniers and the people who believe in science, it's just that politics is really breaking down. And my fear that I lay out in the piece is that Republicans could, if they're smart, and God willing they aren't, figure out a way to actually respond to people's needs or their wants and fears in this moment. And I think that the real fear is that they figure out how to do that in a way that makes Republicans a party that is doing what far-right parties in Europe have been doing for years, which is to combine a sort of hard, xenophobic, racist, nationalist vision with generous social policies, right? That are limited, that do not expand to everyone, but that make at least some people's lives better. And that I think has been a really toxic and politically potent combination for far-right parties in Europe. And I think if what that's going up against is a sort of zombie neoliberalism that we're getting from Joe Biden, of deficit hawkishness and this strange return on the era normalcy, I think that is very bad for the Democratic Party on its own terms.
Kate Aronoff, appreciate your time immensely. Thank you so much. Read Kate. She's a staff writer at the New Republic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks. So I'm just going to cover this quickly. I started covering the political operation against President Lula in 2018. And it occurs to me more and more every day the importance of the pink tide as a lesson for this time. And the survival of Venezuela, even as to this day, the United States is trying to wage a coup there, the coup against Morales in Bolivia, attempts in Nicaragua and Cuba, and also what these governments achieved. They did collectively bring about 70 million people out of poverty, between 30 and 40 million people under Lula himself in Brazil. And as I said from the beginning, that even though President Lula followed a center-left course that was within the bounds of what he needed to work with in Brazil, there was still this extraordinary backlash, not only from the far-right sources in Brazil that began with the judicial coup and illegitimate impeachment of Dilma Rousseff, but also the United States. And that relates very simply, as it always does pretty much everywhere in U.S. foreign policy, to access to natural resources, in my opinion. And I think it's very important to look at this weaponization of anti-corruption politics, quote unquote, by the DOJ as a weapon against the left of any sort in Latin America. Several months ago, The Intercept disclosed its first rounds of leaks, which showed that the Lava Jato prosecutors, which is the independent prosecutorial team that not only made Lula a political prisoner, he's since been released, and of course I had the immense honor of interviewing him, and I'd recommend you watch that interview I did along with Brazil Wire, which is an indispensable source for studying Brazil, and through that, really understanding all of these dynamics. This is how U.S. foreign policy works. This is how, this is what our corporate influences and intelligence agencies are doing in Latin America every single day on behalf of U.S. interests, U.S. corporate interests. And And so those leaks, proved what was obvious to anybody following the case. And a new trove just hit this morning, which is called In the Intercept. And the title is Keep It Confidential. Leaked shot logs show that Brazilian prosecutors evaded treaties to help the U.S. Justice Department investigate Brazilian corporations. And it talks about basically, I'll quote a little bit. The nature of the U.S. government's role in the operation has generated much public speculation and suspicion among many car wash critics. The chats published today show that prosecutors on the car wash team intentionally ignored procedures outlined in Brazilian law and bilateral treaty agreement with the U.S., apparently to keep the executive branch of the Brazilian government, then led by Lula's successor and ally Dilma Rousseff, in the dark about their activities. They also appear to have misrepresented their potentially illegal actions to superiors and the Justice Ministry of Brazil. They secretly hosted a delegation of U.S. officials and coached and facilitated U.S. efforts to cooperate, to secure cooperating witnesses in corruption investigations into the state-controlled oil company Petrobras. Now, Petrobras, as an example, thousands of people lost their jobs. This company lost an enormous amount of revenue and had a huge reputational damage, which also undermined the social accomplishments of the Lula and Dilma administrations in terms of poverty alleviation, education investment, and other vital reforms and successes of the Workers' Party government. The information, I'm quoting again, the information on the collaboration comes from a massive archive of documents and Telegram chat logs provided exclusively to The Intercept Brazil by an anonymous source. And it goes on to talk about it in great detail and how the sort of strong emphasis on keeping this quote unquote confidential. And the political implications, I'll quote just briefly more. The car wash team was eager for its sprawling investigation to move quickly and gain approval through formal channels. And I'm going to skip ahead. For that reason, prosecutors from many countries argue that informal contacts within limits is necessary. It's also clear in chats that the car wash team was very wary of of potential interference from the Brazilian government to protect allies who are under investigation. So that's going to be their move and their counterspin. They had this direct relationship with the DOJ. It was an investigation that enveloped a lot of folks, but it certainly came down hardest and was obviously operationalized to attack the Workers' Party and the left in Brazil. It undermined the huge accomplishments of those governments. And it all correlates with Petrobras making sure that new, I think it's called pre-saltwater reserves, which were discovered, were going to be put in a social fund. They were going to be under Brazilian national control. They were not going to be available for external exploration. And that commitment of the Brazilian government to its sovereignty and delivery for its people is what makes them a target of U.S. foreign policy. And I will just say, please, again, if you've been reading Brazil Wire, if you've been following Brian Mayer's work, who I've interviewed many times on TMBS and Majority Report and Daniel Hunt, you know how this situation worked. And if you've watched the many incredible interviews with President Lula and the many very, very interesting interviews with Dilma Rousseff, or really any left voice in Brazil that has an understanding of geopolitics, you would see this pattern. So it's an incredibly important story. And still to this day, there is a letter that was spearheaded by Congressman Hank Johnson and signed by, good folks like Ilhan Omar to Bill Barr, saying that these Congress people wanted answers on what exactly the Department of Justice did in Brazil, what their role was in this car wash investigation, in this corrupt political hatchet job. And Bill Barr has not even responded, in which loops back to serious transparency and executive branch questions in the United States, incidentally. I'll just say that Ilhan Omar just wrote to The Intercept, the United States has a history of dark history of intervention in domestic Latin American politics, she wrote in a statement to The Intercept, especially given the cozy relationship between the current Brazilian administration and the Trump administration. We in Congress need to be sure that our Department of Justice was not the party to this corruption. The Justice Department declined to comment for this story. It was also extremely unusual that Bolsonaro visited CIA headquarters on his first visit to the United States. That's highly unusual. I'm confident that it has a lot to do with U.S. efforts in Venezuela, and those were visited recently in the meeting at Mar-a-Lago that just recently took place where Bolsonaro's press secretary got coronavirus. So we need to understand these things systemically and call these stories really early on. Brazil was a judicial coup. Bolivia was a classic coup. And I'll just say this, you're going to start seeing, particularly if you're in the sort of left or liberal circles, I guarantee you're going to start seeing a lot more sort of random do-gooder accounts pop up about AMLO. Maybe AMLO's not so good for the environment. Maybe he's a meanie. Don't trust any of these sources. Don't. It does not mean, at some point, of course, you need to have an analysis of these governments and so on and so forth. You know, don't romanticize anybody, but don't trust. And, you know, you can also juxtapose this with the enormous dangers of the Assange case and its threats for journalism. So I wanted to just track that. All right, folks, become a member of the Majority Report today, majority.fm/become a member. That's how this show happens. Then, of course, go become a patron of the Michael Brooks Show, patreon.com/TMBS. This weekend, Joanna Huist on an anti-essentialism history and how the New York Times launders quote-unquote science to justify extreme inequality, as an example. It's a fascinating, very important conversation. Last night, an amazing deep dive with Adolph Reed and a ton of fun, including Larry Kudlow impressions, Mandela Warren, and a deep post game that got into Gramsci, hegemony, and many other things. We're really excited. Patreon.com/TMBS will let people know this weekend about the state of the live shows. But even if they're canceled, we'll be back out on the road soon enough.
I definitely want to get to Austin.
Yeah, I want to get to Austin and Boston and everywhere else we're planning. So even if they're rescheduled, we will think of them. If they do end up, they will be rescheduled. Patreon.com/TMBS. Go become subscribe to the Michael Brooks YouTube channel. 100,015 subs, and we're close to 116. So let's keep powering away. Just as we're starting to see our first 4,000 patrons in the horizon, it helps us grow out and do everything we do, including TMBS book series we're working on. You can also go to tmbs.fm to get our merch and find out about my book and everything else. All right, guys, what else is cooking?
Oh, I'll go. So, right now, as we speak, there is a wave of wildcat strikes, blockades, and general militant organizing spreading across the University of California system. Their central demand is a cost of living adjustment so that grad student workers can afford to live where they live and work where they work. And it's extra egregious because UC is the biggest landlord in many of these places. So, yeah. So we speak with 3 union members who have been fired for their organizing activity about what some of their tactics are, how they're organizing this strike, how the struggle began, the meaning of Bernie Sanders' support, and their broader political vision and what lessons the broader left can draw. So that's out now, patreon.com/theantifada.
Matthew.
Yeah, patreon.com/literary hangover. We're going to record Afro Ben's The Widow Ranter, talk about race, gender, and Bacon's Rebellion. And also subscribe to the Literary Hangover YouTube page because if there is if I have to self-quarantine, that's also going to be time where I Twitch stream. I'm going to self-quarantine and self-Twitch stream. I guess YouTube stream. But
yeah, if we're all in our apartments just like eating pasta, I'll be doing a lot of streams.
Going to be playing a lot of the remastered Halo. Going to be playing some Red Dead. Maybe streaming some Toni Morrison interviews. We'll see what happens. But patreon.com/literary hangover and subscribe to the YouTube channel.
Yes, indeed. Brendan.
Yeah, I feel a little bad about plugging my show. So you guys, if you don't want to come out to Brooklyn tonight,
do it. Don't be weak.
You can
don't give in to a culture of fear. Go party with Brendan. Breathe on each other.
Stepping on my plug and promoting bad public health behavior from Michael Brooks.
Don't worry about it. Relax. Calm down. You only live once. Go for it.
But if you feel like we could use a little digital support on our Facebook page, that's at Means Ways. So, if you could throw us a like there, that actually does help us book future shows. So thank you.
Fantastic. All right, folks, we'll see you on the fun half. Left is best.
Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude, you want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's a good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey Sam, hey Andy, you guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
Welcome to the fun half, folks. Having a bit of trouble with the phones. Maybe I can't really ask for the information I need on air. But it's signed out. So it's actually never been signed out before. Let's see. All right. We'll get to that. We might not get to any phone calls today, though, because we're not going to stay that late. Let's see. All right, let's start with some sound. And guys, maybe somebody can come over at some point and look at this thing. Okay. What do we have up here? Okay, so Jim Cramer is definitely one of these people that's just like, wow, he's still on TV. He's the big Wall Street guy. He, smashes buttons and stuff. Michael, wait, it is possible Trump has the virus? Well, we just got some late breaking news that, see, I should put on where's the breaking news? I do not see the breaking news. Thank you, that works. It looks like I'll put fanfare for this. I think Bolsonaro has it. And Bolsonaro just shook hands with Trump. So it is totally within the bounds of the possible. And I got to say, when I look at all the scenarios,
Bolsonaro
has it, it looks like. A couple of weeks after the rumor in Brazil was that he was potentially cooked by his wife, by one of his cabinet ministers. So not a very...
No honor among fascists.
Not a very alpha couple of weeks.
Bolsonaro.
So I could think of few things. And I'm not... Look, I always have to make clear, don't wish, whatever. If I found out that Donald Trump had the coronavirus, I would become like catatonic with laughter. I could think of like
celebrate good times.
I might start believing in God.
I would renew my faith in Allah. All right, TMBS is my jam. Can I get a shofar for health and happiness for the MR crew? Left is best. Thank you. That's very sweet. Yes.
Health, happiness, and supply lines.
Health, happiness, and supply lines. Let's see. Let me fiddle with the phones one more time. Yeah, the thing is, I don't have my, that's why I check my, maybe, I guess, can you either come in and put it in yourself or text it to me, I guess? Sorry, guys. I don't know. All right, we'll get some songs. We'll get some sound going. Sorry. Bets on who will get the coronavirus first in the MR office. I'm definitely going with Sam. Thank you.
Oh, really? I would say me.
But you two are the favorites.
Yeah, you two are definitely if we had an office pool, it would definitely be a strong contention.
Sam has the kids, Jamie has the socializing.
Right.
And sniffles all the time.
I was going to say. All right. Hey, Mike. In this time of doubt in electoral institutions, I've been taking a lot of inspiration from MLK and Malcolm X, specifically their speeches, letter from Birmingham jail about the need for persistent direct action, and the criticism of white moderates and the ballot of the bullet about the exercise of power and the need for solidarity within instead of relying on alliances with those who don't have our interests at heart, respectively. So that's cool. That's great. I mean, those are both things very much worth seeing, watching. I think I've definitely watched that Malcolm X speech or heard audio, and I've read the letter to the Birmingham jail. I also think that we need to be really clear about the limits of our power and in what kind of the work the left needs to do on itself, because we can't just sort of like retreat into a revolution fantasy either. So those are great things. Those are great pieces. I don't, how they relate to the current circumstances. I'm not entirely sure. Brendan, are you waiting to come in and do something? Okay, we could, Brendan, come on in.
We can't
Brendan's
retreat
coming in
to
to
a
say hi.
revolution fantasy, but we can start planning long term for one.
Okay.
But I agree, like, people shouldn't be posting dumb things about it that shows we have no power.
Definitely not. No dumb things that show people have no power at all across the board. I agree. Real failed state hours. Yes. Schaefer here in Memphis, an all-volunteer army for Bernie knocked for 13,000 in 1 month. We will be channeling that energy into statewide races to correctly confront the stranglehold on working people in Tennessee. This is just one of the ways the movement around Bernie's already delivering. That's great. Legitimate. Let me tell you about my caucus. I heard Biden's brothers being criminally prosecuted. Is this fake news? What's the news about Bolsonaro and Corona? Well, I think Bolsonaro, I have to double check this. I think he might actually have it. I know his press secretary has it. We're good? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brendan. Should have said hi to everybody.
Oh.
Yeah, wave.
Leave him wanting more.
Should I does this need to be updated here? I forget it. And with regard, I don't know if he's being prosecuted, but I know that the investigation of Joe Biden's brother is absolutely real. You can read about it in Politico and elsewhere. James Biden And you know what? And it's perfect because it's exactly the type of stuff.
AmeriCorps Health.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. It's not this whole like, oh, the Russians, the Ukraine. It's just garden variety, like, hey, my brother's in the Senate and I've got a cool stock tip type of stuff. And that the Biden family is littered with that stuff. There's still a chance to stop the nomination of Risky Joe.
I wonder if we have like financial data enough to find out who in the past like decade has made the most on pandemic preparedness, sort of grifting, or among these health companies, because they failed.
I saw that James Baker was like specifically told, apparently, like, you need to like shut the fuck up. Jim Baker, excuse me, Jim Baker. It was like, no, your toothpaste is not going to solve corona, and you need to stop.
Oh, wasn't that Alex Jones, or is Jim Baker on that too?
Oh, they're all.
Oh, they're all.
I mean, they're all.
The
on
toothpaste
that.
thing.
Oh, wait, I don't know. Toothpaste was Alex Jones, I think. I think there was some type of.
Do we still have that food bucket, by the way?
Hell no.
We should maybe.
Kept
that.
God.
You are such a baby.
Oh, please. That was nasty. It was disgusting, and there's no way even you would be able to eat that.
I mean, I would say go for it for a Patreon.
No,
Yeah, look, go for it. Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Prove it. Hey, maybe I am a total. Absolutely, I could be a complete wuss bag.
No,
Go for it for what's the number target? 2,000 Antifada?
1917, baby.
All right, so there you go. Boom.
I mean, if Matt didn't want to do it, I feel like I probably wouldn't either.
Yeah, Matt is like a walking like biodegrader.
Like you and I have a similar preference in terms of trying to eat food that's not total garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Matt loves garbage.
No, I thought I'd have no problem, but that
Yeah.
was post garbage.
Matt and David came in with a lot. Like I owned up to it. I was like, look, I grew up eating like, flower petals from the meadow. Okay, I might totally not be able to deal with this. And they were just like, yeah, I grew up eating Army surplus. I don't think this will be out.
Got some MREs.
All right, let's take a call. You are calling from a 308 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Kowalski.
Hey, our friend Kowalski. How you doing, man?
Not too bad. Just enjoyed TMBS last night. That was a good show.
Thank you very much.
To you.
Thanks, you.
So, the reason I'm calling in is two things. One, campaign site is up. Vote for Kowalski for Congress. Excuse me.
Will you spell that for everybody?
.com. VOTEFORKOWALSKI.com.
Voteforkowalski.com. Now, Kowalski, do you have any concern about calling into shows like this and having one of your competitors say, hey, wait a second, that guy has all these, blue state left friends. What the hell?
No, because quite frankly, I don't think my competitors would be intelligent enough to do that, and I have plausible deniability.
I am going to, you know what, Kowalski? Let me tell you this. I am going to send you a campaign contribution later today, my friend. 100%.
I appreciate it.
I love it.
I will say this to your viewers, though. Don't, definitely, if you have the funds, probably send it to a more known candidate. Need to keep that anonymity going. It's probably not going to go well. I am trying. Message is going well. But the problem is just like explaining things to your family. It takes so long to convince just a couple people that it's really hard to convince the whole community. But the main reason I'm calling in is because we recently had our county convention. And just wanted to tell you how that went, because I think you'll find it kind of funny.
Tell us.
All right. So I'm in a room with about 25 people. There's a few people there from the other campaigns for a whole myriad of races. So there's about 25 people officially from the county, and then the rest were just from other campaigns. But when I stood up to speak to explain why I was running, the first question I asked was, how many people in this room believe in climate change? Raise your hand. Not a single person raised their hand. So off to the races.
Wow.
But the primary thing I'm running on is my carbon sequestering plan, which I've dubbed the conservation economy. You can read all about it on the site. But after explaining it to everybody and how it'd be paid for and what it would do, pretty much everybody was on board with it. So I was able to convince a room of people that don't believe in climate change to fight climate change as long as they can make money while doing it. So essentially, they believe that as long as they can make money fighting an inanimate object, they will fight that inanimate object.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yep, that makes a lot of sense. That's a positive signal. It kind of reminds me, I mean, I know yours, I'm sure, is infinitely more comprehensive, but his voting record overall was very bad on it. But Chuck Hagel would occasionally get behind that type of sort of ingenuity initiative. So I hear a little Chuck Hagel in it. And obviously in Nebraska, that's not a bad thing. You got anything else, Kowalski?
Yeah, if you're on my site, please read between the lines and understand the audience that I am trying to target. So
yes.
Just also,
I'm going to cancel you,
getting
Kowalski.
me out of the Warren camp.
What'd you say, brother?
Just wanted to thank you guys for getting me out of the Warren camp back in August.
Well, you know,
that
here's
would be
the
a horrible
thing.
camp to be
Here's
in
the
right
thing.
now.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. Bernie's a Jew. Here's the thing. My daddy said he's a Shylock.
You're more than welcome. I am very glad that some of us were able to be starting when a time when it was not popular, that I frankly sat back and I did an Obama and I said, let me be clear. I'm not going to indulge the Warren nonsense. And there was some whining and grumbling, but it got you out of it. And I love it. Kowalski, thanks, brother.
Peace and love, everyone. See you around.
Peace and love. PDX Tony, hey, can you guys comment on the kind of strong impression that AOC is just being weird with regards to Bernie? She seems to show more support for Warren over him the last couple of months. What's up? Let me just say, broadly speaking, I think that there's another thing that with a needle we have to thread between, Sam has a very much an attitude of like, it's not personal, it's just policy. I think there's a big limit to that, frankly, because part of what makes you able to determine whether someone will follow through in the policy they're professing is to have some understanding of who they are and what they're coming from. And I know that Sam agrees with that. So we know that we know that out of the gate, most of the people saying all of the people besides Bernie Sanders saying they were for single payer were, being some version of not totally truthful. So I see with AOC, and I'll answer your question in a second. I see there's a certain tendency to be very early on, she's not good, she's selling out. I reject that. Then there's another tendency of just like kind of stan culture with her, that she's not subject to discussion. And this is another, when I keep talking about, stupidities in the left and things that need to be changed, there's a lot of people that either have cancel or stan culture, and both of those cultures suck. Okay. They're both ridiculous. The idea of this kind of like cleansing cult cancel stuff, trash, repulsive, get rid of it. And then on the other hand, paradoxically, I think because in some ways it's so either or, it is like a stan on the other extreme. And you can't, so look, AOC has been not great on Bolivia and Venezuela as an example. Substantively not great. I think with regards to Warren and Sanders, here's what I would say. As a surrogate, I think it's great she endorsed Bernie. I think she's been helpful. I think, frankly, also there's another thing that people need to get a little bit more real about. She's a rock star in a specific world. So there was a much broader set of people that we hopefully needed to get out for Bernie, and has been another kind of tricky thing with the campaign. But it's great she endorsed him. It's, it definitely provided a great boost. It's awesome she did it. I will say that I think people also have to realize the political calculations go both ways. And if she didn't endorse Bernie, there would have been a lot to pay politically. So it wasn't, it was the right thing to do, and it was the smart thing to do. I think that all of them, and Ilhan obviously was sort of different and put some stuff out about Warren, but they're surrogates. And the last several months, they don't do what someone like me, I do. Of course, they could be, infinitely more polite, but every single Bernie Sanders surrogate should have been saying very clearly for months that, Warren should drop, and just being clear on the differentiation. So I think when Warren goes on Saturday Night Live and does this kind of incredible narcissism at a point of crisis, sure, it's just a joke. It's not the biggest deal in the world. I get that, people have their own ways of, sure, okay. But no, it's actually pretty disgusting.
Yeah, it was like a real let them eat cake moment as far as I'm concerned.
It was totally a let them eat cake moment. And it was also like a in a way it's even worse because let them eat cake is sort of, there's a certain honor to it because you're just saying it is what it is. I'm just an asshole. But with Warren,
you're addressing the problem at hand.
Let me self-care while Rome burns. Yeah. And so I think that, I said in AOC was like, oh, this is epic. And I said, I just respectfully, I don't normally do this, but I just tweeted. I just said no, gave her the prayer bow.
Wait, what did she say?
She said, okay, this is epic. And,
to what?
To Warren's Saturday Night Live thing.
Geez, really?
Yeah.
God, I didn't know that.
It's not. Look, again, is this, no, I want to we'll open it up, but please take the problems with Venezuela and Bolivia much more serious than this. But there is a tendency, and I think, as much as I think people got, this whole idea of pushing people to the left and accountability can get very ridiculous, particularly in the context of a presidential campaign. I think for a congressperson who's very new in their career and has incredible talent and capacity, but is also super young, has also made some mistakes, like every human being makes mistakes.
Maybe has terrible taste in television.
Maybe has bad taste in television, whatever. Maybe has some bad instincts. Maybe has some great instincts. I think that, do not demonize, do not be ridiculous. But I think like when I see people just go, oh, 2028 AOC, like, no, like guys, like this is actually a part where being intelligent and constructive and interacting with somebody will actually help them, not to mention, yourself if you care about an agenda.
What 2028 AOC looks like from my perspective will depend a lot about what kind of other Congress people get put in by the left in the meantime. Like we need as long as she's like one of the top 4 farthest left Congress people, she's going to have room to basically fold on some of this.
She's going to have room to triangulate. And also, guys, like, she is not nationally popular. Now, is that because there is a Republican war on her? Absolutely. But there's going to be a Republican war on everybody. And when I see people say like, oh, well, it's just obviously her, I see signals from her that maybe they're not picking up on that are worth looking at. And I also see, again, outside of the bubble, like, I don't know, because look, one of the things with Bernie, like, Bernie would not be where he was and would not stand a onslaught of 5 years, like just every type of demonization and attack if he wasn't actually basically popular. And some folks think that just because somebody has a certain left cred, but they're liked on The View, that equals universal popularity. But that equals maybe some bridges within part of constituencies of the Democratic Party at most. There's huge swaths of the electorate and social bases that doesning cover.
Well, I think it's a problem that there are so few successors to choose from, right? Because the left-wing movements within electoral politics have a succession problem all over the world, not just here. We've seen it in Latin American countries, and I don't know totally why that is, but it's something the left needs to reckon with. Also, I just want to say, like, if that's the only reason you think AOC is like supporting Warren, she tweeted about SNL, like maybe reevaluate.
No,
like,
it's not just no. It's I mean she hasn't, and this could be a problem with the Sanders campaign. Like definitely saying, look, a month ago saying, hey, single payer might not happen anyways, and we'll compromise. That's a very bad timing at a point where you're literally making, regardless of whether or not that turns out to be true, you're making a very clear differentiating argument on it with Warren. That's super unhelpful. Warren, starts to personally attack Bernie and use Republican talking points. No, all surrogates, including prominent surrogates, absolutely should not be, gassing up Warren at that point. Sorry, no.
That's very disappointing to hear. I saw her speak at the Bernie Sanders rally in New Hampshire, and she was amazing. She was so persuasive. I mean, she was a good speaker to begin with, but she's clearly been taking some notes on watching Cornel West and Nina Turner. She was so inspiring. So I mean,
She
I
got
know
plenty of talent.
I know it's like a delicate dance to do. I think there's one strategy, like what Sam was talking about, where the left wing, the social democratic wing of the Democratic Party, should be building bridges to the more left liberal wing. I think maybe that's what she's trying to do. There's another strategy that says that they shouldn't do that. And in fact, left liberalism is sometimes the last line of defense against social democracy or something even further to the left. I honestly don't know who's right.
I think even regardless of the ideological stuff, it's a campaign and there's a job to do. And you don't gas your opponents up during a campaign. And this is one of the reasons why this whole fantasy, ridiculous, embarrassing unity message from the beginning was, I mean, I don't like to use this term ever, particularly not for politics, but it was gaslighting. It's just not, I mean, funnily enough, if ever there was a zero-sum game, elections would be it. And in terms of the adult real world, you can hack into somebody during an election and then you can cut a deal with them later or work with them later or campaign with them later. During an election, when somebody is attacking your candidate at the barest of minimums, you don't say good things about them. And that is, again, that also, like, the Sanders campaign was not nearly structured enough with its surrogates. They should have been vetting speeches. They should have had talking points for everybody. I mean, look, that's politics. That's unavoidable, even if you're running a different kind of campaign. That stuff actually matters. You're calling from a 347 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. What's on your mind? Where are you calling from?
Freddie. I'm from New York City.
Hey, Freddie.
All
What's
right,
going
so
on?
I just wanted to bring up two things. Especially just right after this conversation about AOC. There was a conversation 2 days ago that I overheard that was like a focus on Elizabeth Warren and what are we going to do, like, more or less with like her activities and how it's like kind of divvied up in many respects, like the progressive element of the left. Now, I know that conversation became a more personal question about Elizabeth Warren herself when that conversation was had. But I just want to know, like, what are we going to do about the Working Families Party, which basically more or less, like, stole its election. I mean, it stole its primary, or I guess, endorsement from its membership base. And
Let
then
me tell you something. Let me
Warren.
tell you something, Freddie. I think that's what I think happened based off of all available evidence, and that they didn't steal
Well, just to be clear, what they did is
Matt,
they,
explain all this because you're up on this.
instead of just publishing the rank and file vote like they had previously, they instead collapsed the rank and file vote in with a weighted vote that had like party grandees weighted heavily, and basically that's a clever way of throwing an election. It's basically like a Senate, right? Like it's something with more voting strength. And then in the response to everyone saying, hey, you should release these vote totals so we can know how strong Elizabeth Warren is in the rank and file of the Working Families Party, which she should be powerful or strong in, right? Like you would think that party,
Sure,
right? Like,
but not really.
Well, the WFP is like, that's sort of like their bag, is a
but
Warren.
not their base.
Exactly.
Their base
Well, that's
cares
the
about
point.
this stuff.
And so they
Yes.
hid the part that there's a split between the base and the leadership.
Right.
And that's a huge problem. And if they didn't do that, we would have cleared a lot of things out of which candidate on the left should be support should be thrown behind.
Yeah, so let me just say, I think that the first thing to tell them is they should release the totals now and have transparency in their process. And I'll say more on what I fully think of all of these groups and so on TMBS, frankly. But I will just say, I think, and again, without that cancel mindset, because things can be reworked, whatever. Maybe everybody at these places will start reading Adolph Reed or something. But
right.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, hope springs eternal.
Don't hold your breath.
But any group that either endorsed Warren or stayed neutral, or, like, honestly, watching groups cover their ass and endorsing Bernie when it's essentially over, those groups should be seriously interrogated. And I think, again, we have to look at what is the difference between actual base movements, actual work, what are essentially fundraising lists, what is internet activism supporting kind of, punditry. I mean, look, that's what we do. But the thing is, like, it's transparent. We're in media. we do shows. The idea is you theoretically, hopefully educate and entertain, and that's great. But if you're going to position as being kind of foot soldiers in a political agenda, you have to get asked a different set of questions. And I will just leave it very clearly at, for me personally, and certainly not the editorial of this show, but asking me, Michael Brooks, if you did not endorse Bernie Sanders out of the gate and you claim to be a point organization for single payer, I want to know what the fuck. I want to figure out what the hell is going on.
That's totally fair.
No, I mean, I absolutely agree. It's been on my mind for like a few days because they did just endorse Sanders. It's relatively too late. We could have used that organizational help. They put it behind a losing candidate. And, the thing is, it's complicated because, like AOC in particular, like, she has, Biaggi's in her district. She was a Warren endorser in New York State, pretty big. And I mean, like, functionally speaking, I'm seeing very little amongst more politically active friends of mine around this, like, subject matter. So I think it's going to be like something that we have to like talk about. I mean, when your membership base doesn't go with your leadership, it's like a clear issue. I mean, what's the point of a fusion ballot if that doesn't reflect like the actual movement anymore?
I think you're 100% right, and I think that everything from soft support to not support, I mean, is just in such an unparalleled election opportunity, that's going to require a hell of a lot of interrogation. And I was trying to do it from the beginning because I took this seriously. And it's so funny because I could see a lot of people appreciated it because they get the stakes of it. But it's socially, it's easier. It's easier. You satisfy certain groups of people who tend to have a disproportionate megaphone anyways and feel very used to being catered to and soothed, and they get extremely reactive. And so they're, and that's unpleasant, but whatever.
This is
Thanks
what
for the call, brother.
NGOs do. Like, I feel like a lot of people don't realize that NGOs are actually bad and not terribly progressive. Like, look at statements from Now, Emily's List. Planned Parenthood absolutely didn't endorse Bernie, and nor do they endorse single-payer health care.
I was going to say, now we're just talking about ones that are like straight up reactionary, right, like
but
to the right.
There's a spectrum of this.
Sure, but
But like at the end of the day, they claim to support a base of working class people. But in fact, NGOs are very much part of the establishment and very much tied into a kind of patronage network and, job programs for wealthy fail sons or whatever. And it's bad, folks.
And I mean, I'll just say there's no reason that the Justice Democrats need to be compromised in that way. And
None.
These institutions that did
None.
stay, that are supposed to be nominally like leftist or progressive.
Right.
This is a moment for accountability. Okay, everyone had different opinions about who they should side with in the election. Maybe you thought the unified front was a good idea. You were wrong. Okay, so everyone who's going to be promoted after this or demoted, it's going to be based on how well they recognize what just happened. And if they don't recognize it, then that needs to be made clear to members of the public and people like us so we can tell our public that that group doesn't get it.
Exactly. Right. Because how can I, how can I just flip? Like, okay, if not now, when did some great work? But then you don't endorse the one major presidential candidate who has anything approaching your agenda. It's ludicrous. I mean, it's just and so I can't. So how can that be taken seriously? It's just not serious because you're not serious.
They tried to astroturf the appearance of working class support for Elizabeth Warren, who was the candidate of the NGO complex and academia and all of the professional class. I hate to overuse that word, but it's a real thing. And they failed. So that should show you that maybe we don't stand to gain that many votes by making these kinds of alliances.
Andrew from DC. Fed just authorized $1 trillion to repo purchases for banks. Meanwhile, my small business has a 20% drop in revenue, and my bank told me to F off when I asked for a bridge loan. This system needs to be burned to the ground. Yup. Okay, Joe Biden is speaking live about the coronavirus. Here's some steady leadership at a time.
Fellow Americans, today across the nation, many of us are feeling anxious about the spread of the COVID-19, known as the coronavirus, and the threat it poses to our health, our loved ones, our families, our livelihoods. You know, I know people are worried. My thoughts are with those who are directly fighting this virus, those infected, families that have suffered a loss, first responders and healthcare providers who are putting themselves on the line as I speak for others. I'd like to thank those who are already making sacrifices to protect us, whether that's self-quarantining themselves or canceling events and closing campuses. Because whether or not you're affected or know someone who is infected or have been in contact with an infected person, this is going to require a national response, not just from our elected leaders or our public health officials, but from all of us. We must, all of us, follow the guidelines of the health officials and take appropriate protections to protect ourselves and critically to protect others, especially those who are most at risk for this disease. It's going to mean making some radical changes in our personal behaviors. More frequent and more thorough hand washing, staying home from work if you're ill, but also altering the deeply ingrained habits in our country like handshakes and hugs.
So this is personal responsibility.
It's personal responsibility.
That's
shit.
why earlier this week, on the recommendation of officials,
make
my
demands, you
campaign
old
canceled
asshole.
election night rallies that we had planned to hold in Cleveland, Ohio. We're also reimagining the format
of our
for
debate.
large crowd events we had planned in Chicago and Miami in the coming days. And it will continue to assess and adjust how we conduct our campaign as we move forward and find new ways to share our message with the public.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
Putting health and safety
Where's the
of the American
policy?
people first.
No, he's
above
talking like
everything
Ben
else.
Carson.
Yesterday, we announced a public health advisory committee of experts who will continue to counsel my campaign and me, help guide our decisions on the
funny.
steps to minimize further risks. But we also
Yeah, you better have
we will
people around you
lead
washing
by
your hands, bro.
science.
Policy demands, Joe.
The World Health Organization now has officially declared COVID-19 a pandemic. Downplaying
This
it,
is just news. We
being
know.
overly dismissive, or spreading misinformation is only going to hurt us and further advantage the spread of the disease. But neither should we panic or fall back on xenophobia. Labeling COVID-19 a foreign virus does not displace accountability for the misjudgments that have been taken thus far by the Trump administration. Let me be crystal clear.
Please
The
do.
coronavirus does not have a political affiliation. It will affect Republicans, independents, and Democrats alike.
Coronavirus, get
It
at
will not
everybody.
discriminate based on national origin, race, gender, or zip code.
Pause
It
it.
will touch people in positions of power as well as the most vulnerable in our society. And it will not stop. Banning all travel from Europe or any other part of the world may slow it, but as we've seen, it will not stop it. And travel restrictions based on favoritism and politics rather than risk will be counterproductive. This disease could impact every nation and any person on the planet. We need a plan about how we're going to aggressively manage here at home. You know, you all do
Jesus
know the
Christ.
American people have the capacity to meet this moment.
All right. I can't do it.
He's not
I can't do
saying
it.
anything.
So no, he is saying something. So let's just be really clear about our political choices here. Donald Trump will weaponize this with crony capitalism, and he will turn it into his MAGA xenophobia. Joe Biden
We'll say it's bad he's doing
We'll
that.
say it's bad he's doing that. And again, I want to keep registering. You know what? The two choices you have in the world are between a guy who will take a global pandemic to reinforce xenophobia and someone who will politely say you shouldn't. I'll take the politely say you shouldn't. What we actually need is the third person that all of these, a bunch of idiots couldn't just support and so on, who just has anything resembling a plan to deal with this. And incidentally, campaign people, why didn't Bernie do this? Bernie should do a COVID-19 address.
No, I mean, it goes back to like the shock doctrine, like what Naomi Klein was talking about, how the right and the forces of capital will use a disaster to further their own ends. even and especially when those ends cause more disasters, which, as we know, are not merely natural, they're man-made. It's up to the left to use these disasters as an opening to implement socialist policies, which will actually mitigate these disasters going forward. And Biden's never, ever going to do that. It's like the right is using it, and he's saying they're bad, and he's not providing an alternative.
All right. You're calling from an 847 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, guys. It's Josh from Chicago.
Josh from Chicago. How are you, Josh?
I'm good. Bernie is doing his address actually at 3, apparently.
Good.
Because they send an email out. But
I would like
good
to
news.
thank the Justice Dems. Psych.
Just kidding. All right, go ahead. Yes.
My mom is voting for Bernie.
Nice.
The grandkids argument that Jamie made was actually pretty convincing.
Nice.
Glad to hear it.
Oh no! Get procreating.
Actually, that Tapper argument too that I showed her was also convincing. But the thing that I wanted to talk about is, the chances are pretty slim. I do think that debate could be huge. Putting aside like Biden's mental or cognitive abilities, Biden has also been completely unprepared at any of these debates to even like discuss like things like facts or like plans or like anything like that. I mean, it's just sort of gone to like random ranting about how he was the guy who achieved these
So,
things.
I agree with you, Josh, but it's going to need to be. It's going to be need to be good enough. It's going to need to be good enough. I'm sorry, just because we got to leave here relatively soon. It's going to need to be good enough that the media can't override it. Like, of course, Bernie will outperform him, but it's going to need to be so bad that they can't just go on the networks and say, "Well, Joe had a steady hand." What did you say?
I think that's scary to some people to see somebody up there who, like, in the time of crisis, that this guy literally is completely unprepared to address.
I love it. Let's see it.
Crisis.
Look, I think Bernie and his campaign should lean hard into "We are the safe choice." I agree. I think they should have done it for a while. Josh, thanks for the call, man. Appreciate it. You're calling from a 763 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Alex from the Twin Cities.
Alex from the Twin Cities. What's on your mind?
So I am the manager of a German grocery store. I'm just kind of calling to give everyone a little bit of briefing on what's going behind the scenes from my corporate dispatches. We are now calling for an emergency meeting for pretty much all of the management crew in the Midwest. Don't really know if that's going to mean we're going to shut down our grocery store. I know Walmart's already offering 2 weeks paid sick leave for affected employees without counting against PTO. But yeah, just bringing the word that even on the horrible capitalist corporate side of things, we're looking at realistic shortages across the board and possibly even shutting down some grocers. Just wishing everyone hope and hope you all make it through it. And as always, Majority Report crew, thanks for doing everything you can.
Thank you so much. Hang in there, brother. All right. Yeah. Okay. So what is this? Explain this tweet.
So we got a tweet here by Casey Explosion, what the right thinks socialism is versus what socialism is. A MP, it looks like, or whatever Australia calls these people, Malcolm Roberts. Australia gets a bit of socialism, and it's, empty shelves because people are panic buying because of coronavirus. And,
right.
And then we could just go to a client state. I believe this is South Korea.
Vietnam.
Or is it Vietnam? Western media won't talk about it. Oh, yeah, but the Vietnamese government is helping citizens fight the coronavirus by offering free proper meals for people in quarantine areas and free groceries and necessities for a whole neighborhood in lockdown. And we don't have we don't have the spirit that we're owed that here. And it's horrifying.
And
Don't they have a vaccine already in Cuba?
I think it's not. I don't know if it's a vaccine, but it's a very effective. It is a very effective treatment that we cannot get because of the sanctions.
Nice.
Yeah. So Tony Montana blocked that. Sorry. Rashida Tlaib, I wish Rashida Tlaib had made a run this time. In my opinion, she's our best help moving forward. Who else? AOC de Blasio. Let me just say this. You really have to not think inside your bubble. Like, none of those three candidates right now are national candidates.
Would have gotten close in this primary.
Yeah, like, I mean, one of them literally didn't, right? Like, we saw Bill de Blasio achieve absolutely nothing. So we need to, I'm sorry to say this because we have to move forward no matter what, but like, people really did not appreciate what a unique opportunity Bernie Sanders was, both on the substance and the merits, and also his being a pretty popular politician. And I mean,
the timing in world history.
That was another reason why, like, when I would see people say, like, what's wrong with shopping around? Warren, Tulsi, Yang. Like, I was saying, no, like, this is important. You're not, this isn't a new cable package. This is a really serious thing. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Rashida's awesome. Rashida and Ilan are my favorite members of the squad, right? And I think, and I say, yeah, AOC is cool. Neither of these are nationally popular figures. And
Ayanna Pressley is dead to you, I assume.
I mean, Ayanna Pressley's fine, but Ayanna Pressley's just a conventional politician. Like, I don't, no, Ayanna Pressley does not do much for me. And she would have to do something to do much for me, right? So, she's fine, whatever. So again, I would ask you to really start thinking about it from a candidate perspective. What might actually do the trick? But this is honestly an area where it is for a little bit maybe effective to not vote and engage, but not think purely electorally, because that kind of game of looking for a savior.
Let's look for the next Bernie Sanders.
I mean, yeah, there ain't another. And God. Like,
the left has a succession problem. This is why people stay in power for what's perceived as too long in developing socialist projects in Latin America. Like, we all need to work on it, and I don't really know what the answer is, because it is so hard to find somebody who does have socialist or socialistic values and can also be successful playing the incredibly disgusting game of bourgeois electoral politics.
We need to build a better left. That's definitely a big part of it. You're calling from an 860 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Michael, it's Alex. Can you hear me?
Yes, Alex. What's on your mind?
Hey, so I wanted to comment a bit about the narrative that I've noticed popping up on the media a bit the last couple of days about how Biden's campaign and Bernie's base need to consolidate in some way in order to beat Trump. And I want to remind everyone that Bernie was never running for president just to assume the office. It was always about elevating political consciousness and then eventually diverting those energies into labor activism, local and state politics. I don't know, like the state legislatures, gubernatorial elections, town and city boards of election, the committees, referendums, even like state constitutional amendments and that recent, like the state compact to overcome the electoral college. Whether or not Bernie wins, the most effective way we can eventually overcome politics at the presidential level is if we keep channeling these efforts that the Bernie campaign is a part of and it tapped into, and other movements have attached themselves to the Bernie campaign in some way. But if we continue to build these efforts up, the next time a Bernie candidate comes around, we'll have that energy already in existence. We don't want to wait 4 years, 3.
Yeah, Alex, I agree with you completely to keep going, but I also think we need to really, let's think less about our energy and more about our strategy. And, again, we don't have time, we don't have time to go into all of this now, but there's some real things that need to change and be rethought. And I don't know the answers yet. That's part of the reasons I can be unclear, but just doing more of the same thing that isn't working, is not going to work. But I, of course, keep up the energy, keep it up, keep it going, and we'll see what we can do. Alex, thank you so much for the call. All right, let's take a few pieces of sound. Let's just All right. Let's do. Wait. I thought we were 2 Kramer sounds.
We did. One was pulled after.
Okay. Which one are we doing first? All right. I guess this is a Jim Cramer gives and takes. Jim Cramer, Donald Trump gave a xenophobic, ridiculous, and not comforting to the markets, which was obviously his goal, speech last night. It was to rev up the base, comfort the markets. It didn't work. And Jim Cramer and CNBC actually tells us partially why.
The federal government could tide us over here. I don't want everything closed. I want everything to work smoothly. And the only way to work smoothly is to take advantage of what the rates are and for the federal government to borrow as much as possible and then give it to us. This can be returned after we get healthy. Do we want to come in here every day and see which CEO is taken down by this illness, how many workers are taken down? No. What we have to do is be able to say, you know what, no matter what, the country will keep running because money is not a necessity at this time.
Have you seen any signs at all from our leaders in Washington and this administration that they believe the problem is as significant as you think it is?
Absolutely not. They know nothing. They know nothing.
Right.
We know more than they do. And that's not acceptable either. I want the federal government to know more than me. All right? I knew more than they did in 2007, and I know more than they do now. And it is disappointing. Perhaps they should talk to more leaders, and the leaders can be more candid. But this is a situation where if everybody takes down the revolver, David, at the same time, we're not going to be worried about the companies that take down the revolver.
Okay, so Jim Cramer, by the way, I look into the whole knew about 2007 thing.
I have slightly different memories.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a different memory of Jim Cramer's role in the financial crisis and the global Wall Street wealth theft of that time. But he made some really solid points there, but he is on CNBC. So what do you need to do? I'm assuming this happened later in the day. Well, whether or not this happened later, just recognize that this is the same person in a very short period of time, a person who just made some very astute points. And Brendan was saying in the office, we all understand the part about medicine and infrastructure that this is sending us. And the other message is like, we actually could all work a lot less. And it's totally not necessary to just completely kill ourselves, and
the government can just decide to cover like
the government could
healthcare
just
expenses.
cover it.
Yeah, look at the ways in which all these like several blue states have decided to just waive costs and deductibles for these treatment plans. It's like they just decided it unilaterally.
Yeah.
And guess what? The Supreme Court isn't going to do anything because they need to maintain this moment right now and not have a complete meltdown.
Exactly. And so all that's true. But Jim Cramer, he needs to remind everybody on CNBC that it's all okay.
Yeah, Meg, in every pandemic of any major proportion, including the 1958 incredible flu season.
Long time ago. Just want to point that out there.
Long time ago.
1958 incredible flu season. There's always a tremendous number of people who die overseas, and the public health system is just so poor overseas in so many countries. Obviously, it's very bad in Italy, even though I thought that the northern Italy had dealt with that system pretty good. Can we start distinguishing between the rest of the world and United States? Because we've never had the same lethality rate in any flu that the rest of the world has, because I really think that the WHO, which has really particularly done a terrible job, is just scaring the heck out of people.
I also love the juxtaposition of WHO. I was just actually on national television saying the government's completely idiotic, incompetent, and threatening all of our lives. Okay. All right. You know what, though? I like the first Jim Cramer, and let's use that as a bridge to what Donald Trump said last night. Now, more broadly, this is MAGA full mode. This is a quote-unquote foreign virus. The relationship between this disease and the xenophobic campaign that will be run against migrants and refugees, but also China against certain European partners, is very clear. And then the actual answer for a self-professed populist who is, of course, nothing but a puppet of the oligarchy, this is what Trump has in mind.
And territories. These low-interest loans will help small businesses overcome temporary economic disruptions caused by the virus. To this end, I am asking Congress to increase funding for this program by an additional $50 billion. Using emergency authority, I will be instructing the Treasury Department to defer tax payments without interest or penalties for certain individuals and businesses negatively impacted. This action will provide more than $200 billion of additional liquidity to the economy. Finally, I am calling on Congress to provide Americans with immediate payroll tax relief. Hopefully, they will consider this very strongly. We are at a critical time in the fight against the virus. We made a life-saving move with early action on China. Now we must take the same action with Europe. We will not delay. I will never hesitate to take any necessary steps to protect the lives, health, and safety of the American people. I will always put the well-being of America first.
Okay, so you can see all of the kind of authoritarian signaling there for sure, and then sniffs, and then everything else is pure Republican, Democratic, neoliberal, tax cuts. Take a tax cut and wash your hands. And by the way, even Donald Trump doesn't seem to be super wowed by his own performance there. The C-SPAN cameras were still running, and this is what happened right after. This is real tape, folks.
We're clear.
Okay. Okay.
That's weird. That's what Sam says after every majority report. He goes, okay. All right. Okay. This is Donald Trump just yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, rather. He addressed the nation yesterday. We're banning travel Europe for a month, besides, of course, the United Kingdom. I'm sure it's nothing to do with politics. Here he is talking about it 2 days ago.
And we're prepared, and we're doing a great job with it, and it will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. We want to protect our shipping industry, our cruise industry, cruise ships. We want to protect our airline industry, very important. But everybody has to be vigilant and has to be careful. But be calm. It's really working out, and a lot of good things are going to happen. The consumer is ready. The consumer is so powerful in our country with what we've done with tax cuts and regulation cuts and all of those things. The consumer has never been in a better position than they are right now. So a lot of good things are going to happen. Thank you very much.
All right, so this is a beautiful indictment of capitalism. And also, I love, Donald Trump's only mode of trying to do nice, friendly national leadership is it sounds like the one time every 2 years that he decided, I guess I got to take Don Jr. out for a burger. I'm sure you're doing great, and the school's great. And even though I called you a loser the other day, and even though you broke your leg in the living room and nobody was there, and even though Dad, this is the one time a year where Dad pretends he loves you. And that means for 20 minutes I go, I think you're doing great, and it's great. And this Latvian girl that I just bought said that you look great, and it's great. And all right, go back out there and get him, Tiger.
He really likes to say the quiet parts out loud.
The consumer's never been better, folks.
That's the thing, is his brain only works in one mode, and that's deals. So I imagine when he's addressing a public health crisis, the best he can do is imagine Jim Cramer with the stock market going down with his thumbs down.
Or he's actually saying
we need to do something.
He's like, all right, sorry, COVID, you're going to need to do better than that.
COVID.
I don't want it to spread to the Northeast, and I'm going to want a double reduction in California and food back in Seattle at the latest. And you can take multiple old people with you.
Oh yeah, COVID, you think you can come to America? Well, wait till you hear about our vendors and our consumers.
And
you think you're
slashing interest rates.
Wow, this virus, this COVID, no, it's fun to negotiate with it. It thinks it's in a really tough position, but what they don't know is I have the most tremendous consumer behind my bargaining position.
Look, these are the moments that discredit capitalism. So I think we should just play the second part of this clip again, where he talks about consumers, because guess what? When you're
Absolutely.
feeling like hungry for things you haven't been able to buy for 2 weeks, you're not going to feel like much of a
You're not
strong
gonna feel
consumer.
like much of a consumer. And then Matt,
Not going to be consuming much food, that's for sure.
I'm going to email you something that I want you to play right after this, okay? I'm going to just email it to your inbox.
Right, here it is.
Just 1 second, okay?
But everybody has to be vigilant and has to be careful. But be calm. It's really working out. And a lot of good things are going to happen. The consumer is ready. The consumer is so powerful in our country with what we've done with tax cuts and regulation cuts and all of those things. The consumer has never been in a better position than they are right now. So a lot of good things are going to happen. Thank you very much.
Oh my God.
Yes, this is definitely a capitalism is totally exhausted and a danger to all of us moment. And I don't know. Look, we can't play just the last 10 seconds of it. Play the last 10 seconds of it.
Audio or video?
Just audio, whatever. It's either way.
There's no loss anymore.
Forget it, man.
I mean, anything goes.
They've been around 1,000 years, okay? They got all the angles figured out.
You know what capitalism is? Get fucked.
True capitalism.
That's Scarface explaining capitalism to you in the time of COVID-19. All right. But, never to fear. There is a congresswoman who used to be the head of Health and Human Services. She's got a strategy for dealing with this. And I'm sure that even those of us who are on very different sides of, say, a coup-mongering in Venezuela would really very much like to hear what someone like Donna Shalala, who's a former university president and the former head of Health and Human Services, have to say in this time of crisis.
Gravitas.
I would like a little gravitas and expertise, please. Take it away, Congresswoman Shalala.
Mr. Chairman,
It's not sicko mode, but it's good.
This guy literally just talked about a Travis Scott song.
Mr. Chairman, I have a completely different take on this bill. I think it's a mental health bill.
All right.
I'm going to need a mental health bill watching you do your
exactly.
job.
It's a mental health bill.
Yeah. Please, can you give me a mental health bill? This is how big I'm going to indulge in generational politics for a second. These people are such fucking sociopaths that they go out and actually, because it's been being debunked. Bernie actually has upticked the youth vote. It's just that it's been exceeded by their grandparents and parents running out in droves.
Normie ass never Trumpers.
Yeah, to want to kill us, to ensure that we have an uninhabitable planet. And by the way, as Bernie pointed out yesterday, we're not even just talking about people in their 20s and 30s, like people in their 40s. It is a bunch of assholes.
Yeah, our eggs are getting old.
It is a bunch of assholes sitting around being like, I remember when Dylan went acoustic. Oh, blah, 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 that could never happen. Sorry, voting for Joe Biden. Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. And the only thing that they can do, the only thing that they've got, by the way, I'm sure after, certainly dismissing rap in the most racist, embarrassing terms for decades, what they do now, this is I'm totally forgetting the name of that movie, but the boomers are body harvesting us. They are simultaneously trying to kill all of us with the politicians and policies and markets they support, but then they also want to harvest our culture so that the chairman could say it's not as good as sicko mode. We're talking about Travis Scott. Katy Perry was already the Hillary Clinton thing. Okay,
I think that was
what,
actually
guys?
someone else.
Look, hashtag not all boomers, but wow, on a generational level. Wow.
I mean, that's
you
an understatement.
Get out of your fucking asses to go.
If you think it's bad right now,
oh my
just
God.
wait until this general election when Biden and Trump are challenging each other to push-up contests and like deadlifts and talking about who drives a cooler car. Like, it's going to happen. Like, I blame us in showing them what memes were at some point and them just being like, oh, whatever. Cool.
Yeah, you whining about no public health infrastructure, and I'm just like, okay. Boomers.
I mean, as far as like the generational story.
And Gen X too. Gen X sucks.
Like,
they're not out of this either. Okay? The people, you missed the cutoff. You're in your 50s, and you're on a lot of these slots too. Like, well, I thought that Bernie Sanders. Fuck all of you.
Yeah, they're bad.
I mean, the way that class has been expressed through post-war generations is very profound and identifiable in election results.
Yeah, I mean, normally I say like, oh, you know, hating boomers or older people is really the class hatred of fools. But I think
that's
in
anti-Semitism
some
too.
cases, these things do take on a generational character. And if you look at who's doing most of the work right now, it's people under 45. And if you look at who's more likely to own all the property, it's people older than that. So yeah, I guess we can combine multiple things into one and say this class conflict has a generational character.
I would say it does.
But you know, not all boomers. I love my
Not all
parents.
boomers. I don't know your parents, but I mean, obviously, of course. I mean,
like,
honestly,
my boomers are traitors to their class.
there's people
my
that
boomers, my parents are traitors to their class and their generation by supporting Bernie.
I actually honestly feel the worst for people who tried to hold the flame from that generation. Because they've been trying.
Shout out to Peter Feld, best boomer I know.
I was trying to respond to Donna Shalala by playing Hit 'Em Up by Tupac, but I realized that I'm indulging myself too much. Okay. All right, guys. We're going to do one more call and one more I am, and then we're out of here. All right. Final call of the day. What is the final call of the day? Let's see.
So amped up to fight coronavirus now that I heard that Katy Perry song.
Mr. Speaker.
It's actually by a singer named Rachel Platten.
Oh, I thought it was Katy Perry.
Fight song wasn't recorded.
Many
by
do.
her?
No.
All right.
Oh,
It's just someone who looks and sounds just like Katy
I
Perry.
guess we weren't clear whose fight song it really was.
Yeah. Indeed. You're calling from a 310 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Cassandra calling from Los Angeles. How you doing today?
I'm pretty good, Cassandra. What's on your mind?
Well, you know, it was, you know, I was actually out helping a friend who is trying to develop her cosmetology skill last night, getting my haircut in like mid-city when Trump had announced that he was shutting down air traffic from Europe. And it was kind of crazy driving home from Sepulveda back to Redondo Beach. And like, this is usually a street that's just gridlocked, no matter what time it is.
Right.
Empty. I made it back home in like 30 minutes, which is like absolutely unheard of in Los Angeles. And, you know, I always turn to you guys because, you know, sometimes I have a hard time sussing out what's going on in this political climate. And I guess I'm wondering, what do you guys think? How is this going to impact the primaries, the general election? I mean, my head's just kind
First
of
of all,
spinning right now trying to see.
I'm sorry. First of all, I just want to say props on the most LA call this show has ever gotten.
Yeah, it was great.
That was awesome.
Also, I didn't think you guys would pick me. Can I do a shout out real quick to my boy who listens in Rochester, New York,
Yes.
Thunder and Shadow, a scholarly man with a scholarly dog?
Okay, shouts to him. I have no idea. I would say, generically speaking, a global health pandemic that damages the economy is not good for the incumbent. So,
and hopefully that doesn't mean
Definitely.
we don't have elections.
well, yeah, that's the other thing. They're gonna.
Hopefully they
he's
don't
gonna
declare
try.
martial law.
Yeah.
Like any number of things could happen.
Not safe, folks.
That's why I'm saying that we can't vote.
I think 2024 we'll be able to get voting back.
I think in 2024, but you know, the ladies who are upset, go to Nordstrom's.
Oh my God.
All right.
I just saw something that's going to make you really happy.
What is it?
Bolsonaro aide tests positive for coronavirus days after Trump meeting.
No, I know.
that.
Yeah, we
Oh.
headlined it.
All right.
Another
my
one?
bad.
Is there another one?
Somebody just sent this to me like it was new.
Oh no, it's just But yes, I am closely eyeing that, and baby boomers can learn about Lula memes from what I'm posting.
There you go.
Apparently, that's what they're focused on. All right, thanks a million for the call. Appreciate it. All right, folks. Final couple IMs. Would you respect Warren more if she just endorsed Biden and made a decision instead of doing nothing? No.
Yeah, I'd respect her more if she did something positive for progress.
Yeah, here's what I would respect if she didn't run for president and endorsed and campaigned with Bernie Sanders, or if she ran for president in 2016, or if she Again, I wouldn't. Again, the thing with Warren is it's a stand-in for understanding delusions. It's not. Look, of course, I don't like her. Obviously, I don't. Look, I can't get into the emotional relationship that people have with her one way or another. But
they should end it.
They should definitely end it. It seems very Jim's Jonas to me right now. It's very Jonestown. But regardless, the way that was set up for months, where people tried to so deeply police a basic analysis, and the way that overlapped with a lot of upper middle class entitlement is a big problem, way beyond Elizabeth Warren.
Well, I think some people were scared because they think that we need all of the suburban liberal women in order to win.
At some point, but
the failure
not
of the Warren
primary
campaign shows that there is not actually a huge base for those kinds of politics.
There's no doubt about that. Michael, your second choice for president is an anti-vaxxer. Why did I pick such an annoying one?
Yeah,
I got to pick something better.
Up.
Yeah, just shut up. She also endorsed Bernie Sanders, which is infinitely important. And incidentally, if we're playing that game, voting for, Raytheon budgets is worse. Sorry, it is. And also, I will say, I'm not here to, I don't need to spend all my life defending Marianne Williamson, but I'm not even sure that that's even technically true. I've certainly heard Marianne Williamson say that that's a mischaracterization of her position, and I would not at all be surprised if that was not a mischaracterization of her position. But she endorsed Bernie, so she's better.
Also, who really genuinely has a second choice for president? Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Who cares about our rankings after that?
The whole,
none of the other people matter.
Both be president?
The whole point of that conversation, and the reason I emphasize, look, I like Marianne Williamson, but the reason that I emphasize that was to try to humorously undermine this totally stupid narrative about unity and all of that mishigas. One group that took it incredibly seriously is you remember Elizabeth Warren having a national temper tantrum at this time, and Bernie Sanders vetted her to see if she could be VP and Treasury. Just remember that. All right, I got to do something better than that for the final I am of the day. That was too sad. All right, let's see. Devil's apricot. What the fuck? You know nothing about Generation X. I guess this is it.
Oh, we got Sam's alt.
Yeah, it's how dare you? Because the boomers didn't quit their TV jobs. It was very bad for us.
Oh my God.
Until you see.
I filmed straight to video.
We did straight to video because the boomers wouldn't leave. And I liked Norman Lear, but the boomers stayed. And we couldn't. And then there was Reaganism and Michael J. Fox on this show. It wasn't our fault.
Oh, shit.
All right, let me
this is what someone was trying to tell me. Bolsonaro tested positive. I see it in a tweet from a verified account. It's translated. So let's confirm that. But that's very exciting.
Lula Libre. Oh, man. Yeah.
New
And it
York
looks like
Post,
apparently
Natasha Bertrand, Washington Post. Yeah, this is legit. And he just had dinner with Trump.
Hell yeah. It's good to get some good news once in a while.
There's always silver linings. Well, whoever knew that so much good could have come out of Mar-a-Lago?
Dirtbag MLK.
Fingers crossed. We may be living in hell world, but no one said the comedy was bad.
Oh, shit. Yo, they hugged.
We should pull up that video of them at Mar-a-Lago before we go.
We really are in uncharted waters right now.
All right. Okay, and I love it. This guy said, ha, 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 thank you. So apparently he was joking, which is good to know, or he's just covering his ass. Whatever way, as we always say, hashtag not all Gen X, hashtag not all boomers. Bolsonaro with the positive test, and he hugged Donald Trump. Ha, 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 ha. Thanks, everybody. See you all tomorrow. Stay safe.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I